Thank you for the kind introduction, Giuseppe, and thank you for having me here, especially thank you, Michel. Already when I arrived here, the beautiful setting mountains, I felt like I'm altering my state of consciousness, so it was a good start to the meeting. So I will speak about the legal situation and implications, but before for psychedelics. But before I do this, I will just make sure that my slides are visible. So in the meantime, one slide on PAREA. PAREA stands for Psychedelic Access and Research European Alliance. It's also a Greek word that denotes this concept of togetherness, of companionship, of connection, of community in a Greek culture. And these are our members, starting with EU-wide patient organizations covering mental health, Pain Alliance Europe, neurology, then going to the next layer, which is scientific societies, including European Psychiatric Association, Neuropsychopharmacologists, and even Association of European Cancer Leagues, and finally some of the leading European psychedelic foundations. And we also have a category of community supporters where we host especially national psychedelic societies. So of course, the newly born Italian Psychedelic Society is very welcome to join us. So coming to the scheduling, of course, psychedelics is, they are not exactly new. Some synthesized compounds are new, some were with us for millennia, but they were scheduled in the most restrictive category. You can see here 3 conventions which control and limit the use of narcotic and psychotropic drugs, and psychedelics more specifically were psychedelics like MDMA, like psilocybin or LSD, are included in the 1971 UN Convention on Psychotropic Substances, which establishes 4 levels of control, and psychedelics are put in the most restrictive class, which talks about substances presenting a high risk of abuse, posing a particularly serious threat to, I will decline or approve, I'll try. And they have very little or no therapeutic value. So this is the reality since 71 until still today. And it's not exactly clear what were the reasons of this scheduling, not really being very rooted in science. Many suspect rather in some political motives and so on. Okay, let's try to move it. There. When it comes to the situation in the EU, the European Union doesn't have a separate act that is governing which substances are illegal and to what degree, but it has these directives and regulations which are somehow streamlining the kind of the UN scheduling, and most importantly, it's really in the hands of the EU member states, which have their own national policies, where they specify the restrictions of psychedelics. And again, as per the UN Convention, briefly, or in general, really, the use of psychedelics is only possible in a medical context. And one thing that is clear is that the scheduling in Europe and beyond makes it substantially more difficult for scientists to conduct research. So, in a way, scheduling didn't really stop in any way the usage, but it completely stopped the scientific research for many decades. Coming to the barriers to the scientific research, it creates this legal imbalance. Once the substance is scheduled, it's kind of going to this black hole, and it's very difficult to take it out from it. We see with psychedelics that it will probably require extensive, expensive, onerous phase 3 trials so that the scheduling is reconsidered. So the only pathway for now seems through regulatory approval through agencies like Food and Drug Administration in the US or EMA. It impedes scientific collaboration. Scientific collaboration and scientific research is already complex and difficult as it is, and it's adding an extra layer of complexity and extra costs. Then, because the large-scale trials are very difficult to be funded by philanthropic donations, and MAPS has been an exception, but even with this level of support, it didn't happen. It needs industry and private donors who are not just funding it, but in a way setting the agenda and shaping it. And we now see the majority of companies are not interested, for instance, in psychotherapy. So in this way, the system favors well-resourced players rather than, for instance, academic researchers, let alone indigenous communities who have been stewards of these medicines for decades and millennia. One thing that it does is leading to these patentable and potentially expensive synthetic substances, which are preferred over natural ones. It also had a very dire impact on public funding. Only now in the last few years, couple of years really, both at the federal level in the US and also at the EU, there is some opening. There was just this new EU funded project with clinical trials of psilocybin, but this is very new. For decades, there was no possibility to have access to the public funding. And just maybe speeding up a little bit, then there is bifurcated scheduling. So even if we manage to have, say, MDMA approved, it will only be rescheduled probably with this specific formulation and method, not in general. And in an interest of time, coming to conclusions. So scheduling is a barrier hampering research. It restricts the enrollment in clinical trials, it stifles innovation, inhibits access, and this is, of course, in the context of worsening mental health crisis. Also, it breaches this principle that the science should be independent. It limits who can pursue the research, kind of skewing it more towards only industry, and there is nothing wrong with an industry involvement, but we want a level playing field. And rescheduling, on the other hand, would have a very specific effect. It would benefit scientific research and researchers, and the law change would have no effect on psychedelics availability or use in a recreational context. And just a quick postscriptum, PAREA has been recently contacted by the WHO Controlled Substances Unit, because they are revising these guidelines on controlled medicines. So we were invited alongside 20 few other organizations like UN, Médecins Sans Frontières, to provide feedback. So that's, I guess, a promising sign that maybe something is moving, and we are now creating a focus group. So that's it. If you'd like to download the slides, you can do it by scanning this code. Hopefully it will work. Maybe I'll just move this little stripe here. Okay, thank you.